guys, welcome to the Dragon's Voice podcast. I am your host, Julie Rees-Deans, and thank you for supporting the channel. You know, it's growing rapidly, and I want to thank you all for tuning in every week on a Friday to check in who is the latest guest on the show. And I always announce them on Facebook and Twitter, so make sure you go and follow me. It's at Dragon's Voice 20 or at Dragon's Voice Podcast if you're following on Facebook. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel because it is a big help, and I want to do this as a career. I didn't, start it off at just random, and luckily enough, I know a few people that helped me out. So to the people, you know who you are, thank you so much. So Dragon's Voice Podcast is going to continue going. It's never going to stop, and in the future, there's going to be a 1-year anniversary soon. So it's all looking up. Things are looking up, and definitely we got to keep going. And my next guest here on the Dragon's Voice podcast, he is former Wales under 21. He's played for loads of clubs. He's played for Cardiff City. He's played for Hereford, Forest Green Rovers, Luton. You know, he's been around. He's been a top goal scorer for various clubs, and I've been after him for a while. In all fairness, I have been after him for a while because I thought he's one of those players that stands out to me. And to be honest with you, I I always wanted him at Barry, to be perfectly honest with you. But he's there with me on Zoom. It's none other than Stuart Fleetwood. Stuart, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, mate, you okay?
Yeah, not too bad. So, what a career you've had. A lot of clubs. You played for Luton, Brighton. Exeter, Forest Green Rovers. Charlton Athletic. Some of these clubs have been in the Premier League or have gone on to play in the Premier League and Championship. You've had a pretty decent career, and you played for Wales. So how do you look back on it now and do you just think to yourself, man, what a career I've had?
Yeah, it's always the old cliche where you sort of look back on it. At the time you probably don't appreciate it as much, but then when you look back at it, and now I've got obviously 3 kids of my own, and the 2 boys, one of them so into football, and when I see teams come up on the TV, and I'm like, oh, I used to play for them, and he's like, what? Oh my god, that's amazing. And I think it hits you then when people sort of think, oh, you used to play professional, and you used to play for this team and that team, and this year when I started playing this season, unfortunately been cancelled short. It was my 19th season. So like you said, I've been around a long time on the scene since I was like 16, and still playing to this day. So yeah, something I'm really proud of, and I want to continue it.
So what team are you playing for now then? Is it called Yate Town, is it? Or...
Yeah, so it's Yate Town. Yeah, we're in the Southern Premier, so non-league. So it's one below Conference South, Conference North. We're in the league with teams like Weston, Tiverton, Taunton, so a couple of big teams in there. The standard is very high. It was in the same league I was in last year at Swindon Supermarine, and I've signed on as a player coach this year. So obviously getting to that age where I do want to keep playing as regularly as possible, but the coaching route is something that I do want to go down. So I was lucky enough to get an opportunity at Yate as a player coach under Paul Michael, another Welsh guy who was at Cinderford and then ended up going to Yate in the summer. But unfortunately, obviously we're in lockdown, and it's looking like that the season's probably going to get postponed, unfortunately. So we've only been like 9 games in, which is a bit of a disappointment.
And we're here to talk about you, of course, and you, like I said, you've had a tremendous career. You've been around the block a few times, but you have started at Cardiff City, and I know just to say as well, I never record my podcast live, so all is good with that one. And but you started your career with Cardiff City. You made a few first team appearances, but how did it all start? Was it a YTS scheme? Was it an academy? How did you start?
So basically, I think I got scouted playing for my local side in Gloucester. I think I scored something like 104 goals in a season. I think I was like 13. And I never really knew that you could sort of have football as a job. I love football. I love playing it. I played rugby to a decent standard as well. And I just wanted to play as much sport as I possibly could. And then I got a trial down at Cardiff City, got into the youth team, sort of under 14 level. And then just basically went up through the youth team and then got offered a scholarship, which, like you said, was a centre of excellence back then, no academies. And I moved away from Gloucester to go and live with a family in Cardiff when I was 16, as soon as I left school. And that was the start of my apprentice at Cardiff. It was, back in the days where you're cleaning the boots, you're looking after the first team's kit, you are basically a full-time cleaner, and then you play sort of youth football in the background as well.
When you were at Cardiff City, I mean, it was in the mid-90s where you started, because I think you were around 12 or 13 from what I've gathered in my research, that you went to Cardiff. And, some of the players there, the likes of Scott Young, Dean Sill, and I think Andy Legg was just coming in. But then you sort of broke into that first team in the early 2000s where, players like Andy Legg, Robert Earnshaw, Danny Gavardon and Andy Campbell and all them lots were, the first team regulars there. I just really wanted to know that when you made your first team appearance for Cardiff, was it in a league game, was it in a cup match? And what's your story behind, starting with Cardiff City?
So I remember I did my first year. So from 16 to 17, it was all sort of youth football. Got in the reserve team, so ended up playing reserve games. And you're playing sort of, with players like Gavin Gordon was there. So I played up front with him. And like you said, Andy Campbell would be in the reserve sometimes. So play up front with him. These are lads who've been at Premier League level. And like I said, I'm a 17-year-old lad trying to make my way in the game. And the experience was amazing. It was in the days where the reserve team had, the first teamers that wouldn't play on a Saturday. So it'd be a high standard. We'd play teams like Bristol City, Swindon, Plymouth, always on the home pitch. So you played in Indian Park, great experience. And then I remember the manager was Lenny Lawrence, and he said to me that I'd be in the squad for a Carling Cup game, I want to say back then. May have been Coca-Cola, I can't remember, against Watford. And I think Watford were in the Championship. Obviously, Cardiff were in the Championship. And we were 4-1 up. I think Ernie scored a hat trick, and I came on for like the last 10 minutes, and that was my first ever sort of debut. I think it was just before my 18th birthday. And it was surreal experience.
Do you know when you were surrounded by the first team regulars such as Ernie, such as probably Danny Gavardon, Andy Legg, and all them characters? When you first walked into the changing rooms and you were started to break through as a first team player, did any sort of players or characters stand out to you, and sort of the type of characters, because you sometimes, when I speak to a lot of people, you get your type of character, you get the funny man, the leader, what was around that changing rooms and locker room at that time?
Yeah, it's a weird one because we obviously, the first team had the home dressing room in Indian Park, and then the youth team had the away dressing room. So you always go there and change and then go off to your various training grounds. And I was actually still in the youth team dressing room when I got into the first team. So I didn't transition straight away. But I remember I was on Peter Thorne's boots. I was on Andy Legg's for a little bit. And I was on Gareth Ainsworth when he was there as well. So I was cleaning their boots anyway. And you sort of make that transition into it, and the youth team start to look up to me then as a player who's been in that environment and been in there. But I was still so nervous to go in, just because I'd have to knock on the door before I went in, because that's what we had to do as youth team players. I was playing in a team with some of these players, and I was cleaning their boots before a game. So when I made my debut, I started against Derby in the Championship, played up front, and I had to clean Peter Thorne's boots on the day of the game because I was still his boot boy. And I think that just keeps you so grounded, and that's something I think that's missing from the game a little bit now, where the amount of respect we had for these players was like paramount. It was unbelievable. And Graham Kavanagh was obviously captain at the time, and as a captain, he was amazing, like unbelievable. He'd often come into the youth team dressing room and sort of say, look at Fleet as an example. He's cleaning boots. He's in the first team, and he'd sort of give a few lads a bit of a rollicking and sort of say, are you trying hard enough? Are you doing? Or do you want to be where Fleet is going to get to, and stuff like this? And he was so good with me as a captain. He was amazing, and all of them were, to be fair. Like I said, you get your funny characters, and you had Gabardon there and James Collins, who'd obviously come from the youth team as well, and Ernie, obviously, like absolute firework, ball of energy. They're the funny ones. But then you've got your Andy Leggs and your Kavanagh and your Willie Boland, especially, very straight down the line, professional, want things done properly. So I could take a mix from sort of each player and try and adapt my game to be like them as well.
When you mentioned Graham Kavanagh, I mean, you got to look at the fans' perspective as well. They're looking at them as gods, in some ways, because, Graham Kavanagh was, like I said, he was a phenomenal player. Did you feel that because Graham Kavanagh had that maturity level and he had that professionalism and everything, did some of you guys in the youth academy, I'll just say the academy or the youth system,
yeah,
do you feel like you don't, because at the time I know Cardiff. No disrespect to Cardiff back then, but it wasn't, on the level as they are now, because they played in the Premier League. But did you feel that Graham Kavanagh was a player, a big fish in a small pond, where he could have gone on to bigger and better things, as a player? Because me and a few others thought that certainly, I know like Ernie and Danny Gabardon, I'll just name a few, went on to play in the Premier League and everything. But did you feel that Graham Kavanagh should have, still had that ability to go to a Premier League club or something,
Yeah, definitely. He had an aura around him where everybody respected him. When he walked in the room, it sort of went a bit quiet because of who he was and his stature. But I think he genuinely loved the club. And I think it was a massive loyalty thing with him, because I do remember when we started going through, obviously, the money issues and we had to sell him. And I remember him crying, sort of being in the change rooms and being really upset. And he ended up getting a helicopter, and I think he signed for Wigan like a few hours before deadline day, just because we needed the money to sort of bail the club out. And I remember him being in tears. And to me, that just shows a massive loyalty. Like I said, the fans respected him. Everybody at the club respected him for what he did. But ability-wise, yeah, he was head and shoulders above a lot of people, especially in that league. Obviously went on to play World Cups with Ireland and do whatever he did. But first and foremost, sort of a great character and just like a really nice guy. But the loyalty aspect was massive with that.
And one thing I want to bring up, because of course, the last episode I did was with Curtis McDonald, and you played alongside with him and everyone. So who was in that youth team at the same time? Was it the likes of Darcy Blake, Joe Ledley, Chris Gunter? What was it like to be around sort of those guys who would go on to, become cult legends, heroes, for not just for their clubs, but for Wales as well, because it is a big achievement for what they did.
Yeah, it was the sort of players. So at my age, we had Byron Anthony was a year above me. Obviously, went on to play league football for Bristol Rovers and have a pretty decent career. Joe Ledley was a year below me, so obviously he was in the same dressing room as me. Joe Jacobson, obviously still captain at Wycombe now in the Championship. Darcy Blake, and then Chris Gunter was actually my boot boy when I got in the first team. So I'm still trying to get that £100 back that I gave him at Christmas. So I'll see if he can lend me that back. But no, it was Joe Ledley was the one that stood out, if I'm honest. When he came in, obviously I was a second year YT and he was a first year, and he just had natural technique and the quietest guy you'll ever meet. And then obviously you see him dancing on the tables for Wales, and he's a proper character. But I think that just comes out in people once they've played the game and get the experience. But Joe was definitely one, obviously, that everybody knew he had something. But there's, for such a, not a small catchment area, but, for a centre of excellence, not an academy, to have the sort of players that have gone on to do big things, especially for their country, is probably testament to the youth system that we had.
Yeah, and especially so with Joe Ledley, you say he's quiet now. He's no, I mean, this podcast is probably going to be released, in a couple of weeks from now. But on Twitter, he wasn't quiet for revealing the truth. I don't know if you saw that with his Twitter account being hacked. I thought, because it started off with the selling of the PS5 thing, and then all of a sudden he went into like a conspiracy. I know it wasn't him in the end, but it was like a conspiracy theory moment. You think to yourself, what's going on here, Joe? What's happening there?
Yeah, he's he like I said, in the youth team, he was so quiet. Really, he had the horrendous curtains back in the day, but he was just a really nice lad. Really like sort of nice Cardiff lad, loved the club, and gone on to do like amazing things in the game, and go and play for teams like Celtic and Crystal Palace in the Premier League and stuff. What he's done is fantastic.
So you spent a couple of years with Cardiff City, on and off appearances, and especially in the first team in the leagues or in the cups and everything. During your time, of course, Cardiff City were bouncing from manager to manager. I think it was Lenny Lawrence. No, it was Alan Cord, Lenny Lawrence, and then they had Dave Jones, who I think around about the time you were on your way out of Cardiff City when Dave Jones came in. So what was happening? Because I know that you left in 2007, and if you stayed another year longer, you would have been around the club where they got to the final of the FA Cup, probably. But what was happening at the time when Dave Jones came in? Because I know for a fact that when he did come in, Peter Ridsdale was at the helm because Sam Hammam had just left and all that issues came. And I don't need to go into that because I think a lot of the guests I've had have gone through it with me, especially Leggy, because he went into full depth about it. So what was happening in that last season or year for you at Cardiff City when Dave Jones was there and Peter Ridsdale was the chairman?
So basically, when I made my debut, like I said, under Lenny Lawrence, I actually got injured on my debut and only lasted 45 minutes. I ended up getting man of the match, which was nice. We lost the derby, but then, like I said, in and out appearances. But I felt like I was part of it, and Lenny Lawrence liked me. He liked what I did as a player. And I felt like if I'd have been there under Lenny, I'd have cemented a first team place. When Dave Jones came in, I think sometimes you just don't see eye to eye with managers. Now, that's not because we had a falling out or anything like that. I just think that back then I probably thought I'd made it a little bit too soon, if I'm honest. I was in and around the first team, 18, 19, sort of hailed as the next sort of big prospect. And I don't think Dave Jones liked that, if I'm honest. And he sort of told me in no uncertain terms, you haven't done anything in the game yet. So, come down off your pedestal a little bit. Gave me a few opportunities in the first team, but it just never materialised. It was just one of those things, and that happens. And he basically told me, that I was able to go if I wanted to in January, and I didn't really, although I had an agent and stuff, I wasn't really aware of like other football. I was in such a bubble at Cardiff, where biggest club in South Wales. I was in the first team, I was doing this, I was doing that. I didn't really have any appreciation for what other players were doing in lower leagues and anything like that. So that's how it sort of came about, going to Hereford. And then obviously I missed out on a lot of when the money troubles really started to kick in under Ridsdale and stuff. So I wasn't really there for a lot of it, but I did see the changeover. Obviously when Dave Jones came in, he started to bring in his own sort of players, and a few of the old heads sort of got, left behind a little bit. And you could see the dynamics of the club start to change a little bit. So I probably just missed out on that a little bit.
It was bonkers because when I was, I followed. I'm a Brighton Town supporter, but originally, as my story always goes, I was sort of supporting Cardiff City at that time, and I was really surprised that when Dave Jones took over, and I know you were coming, just having your foot out the door and going into Hereford. But it was mad, I think when he first came in, it was in 2006 and 7 time. But then you just see, him bringing in Robbie Fowler, Hasselbank, Glenn Louvens, Trevor Sinclair, and you think to yourself, it's like, how can he, afford, even though they're probably on free transfers, but you're talking about the wages, and you think to yourself, how is he affording? How can he afford such players when a lot of people know that there's problems behind the scenes, and it really baffles me to this day how he got away, not got away with it in the sense that he was getting in trouble, but got away with it with all the problems that was going on. I mean, was you there when they were coming in, or did you leave before?
So yeah, I was gone before then. So I think Dave Jones had only been in charge maybe a couple of months after I'd gone. But I said, under Sam Man, everybody knew what the club was. Sam was very open about his money and stuff like that. And then obviously when Ridsdale gets the job, he'd obviously not got a great reputation with what happened to Leeds. And like I said, there's no smoke without fire. So, you're seeing all these big names coming in, like after, like I said, like Hasselbank and Fowler and all these big names for big money. And like you said, you do wonder where it comes from, but then you think, hang on, let's just step back a minute and look what happened to Leeds. There's a pattern evolving here. So I think rather than it being Dave Jones, I think it was probably a little bit higher up than him. But like you said, it paid off in some ways, obviously getting promotion and stuff like that. But like I said, it probably left the club in a bit of turmoil. I think the money problems were starting to happen a little bit before then, because I do remember a time where we didn't get paid our wages for a couple of months, and this was under Lenny Lawrence. And Lenny basically brought in the first team and the lads who were involved, including myself, and sort of said, you're not going to be getting paid for the next 2-3 months. You don't have to come in. We're not paying you. You don't have to be here. Obviously, everyone was like, no, we're here. We'll stick it out, blah, blah, blah. But obviously, at the time, I'm not on great money, for what it is now. Excuse me. And the first team players were chipping in for like youth teams petrol and stuff. And there seemed to be a lot more like camaraderie when Lenny Lawrence was there, and Alan Lee was giving out like lads like 20-30 quid here. I'll go and get yourself some petrol so you can get to training. Kavanagh was sorting the boys out, and it was that's, I think, when everybody started to smell a little bit of danger on the financial side.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the final question is, before we move on to the other clubs that you played for, I wanted to know, because you said that the youth system in terms of YTS system of, clean and boot changing is what is missing in today's football. And I completely agree, because, if you look at footballers today, I remember speaking to the likes of Kevin Ratcliffe and everything, and he always mentioned, to get good camaraderie and togetherness, you got to grow up together and play together in the system. That's why the success of the Wales national team has become so successful. But then you're seeing, some of these footballers today, there's a sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't say gluttony, but it's like, because of money and because of fame, the media and everything, it's got to the point where some of these managers today are not managers, but they're more like coaches. And, I call them glitz and glamour managers myself, because you see most of them with the suits and the ties and, but a lot of the players that I've spoken to, and some of the managers I'm speaking to, they say it's what is missing, but if there was a way to bring it back, how would you see it? Would you see that coming back anytime soon? Or do you think football's gone so far ahead, they can't take a few steps back? What would your...
I think the money is the biggest issue. I know that at clubs they'll have, separate dressing rooms, first team, youth team. They may have a few jobs here and there. So I did a little bit of coaching at Cheltenham Academy a few years ago. I ran the under-13s after I just got my B license, and it's still quite similar there, where the young lads will have to look after the first team, get their kit for them and stuff like that. Obviously, all within the rules that are now placed on it. But I just think, it's players at the Premier League level. It's all about who can get the nicest car, really, who can get the house first, and and then players, and that's why so many players drop out of football, because Chelsea, for example, I think last season they had like 40 players out on loan. That's like 2 teams at non-league level, it's 2 squads, and these lads, they'll come out of Chelsea, been there since they were, 12 years old. They're now 22. They've never played a competitive game of football. They're probably millionaires. Where's your motivation to go and play? Like, why would you want to? And then you've got a team in the conference who they say then come in for them and say, oh yeah, we'll give you 500 quid a week. They'd be like, yeah, bonkers. I'm a millionaire. Like, why would I do that? But they're not going to get those opportunities. One, because they've never played a competitive game. And that's why I would just urge any sort of player to go out on loan and get games. I think that's the only way that other players are going to stand out from the rest. But do I think it's ever going to come back to how it was? No, just because the money is too much at the elite level. And that goes probably down to the championship. Even the money in the championship is absolutely bonkers now. But yes, it moves with the times. But I remember my first sort of taste of it. So I remember at Cardiff, we used to, in the cafeteria, we'd have to wait till the first team ate their food, and then we could eat ours. So we'd be waiting until they'd all finished, plates were away, and then we could have our food. And I think it was my first day at Charlton, and I got there and I had my plate, and I was about to, and a youth team player just walked around and got something in front of me. And I said, what are you doing? He was just like, eating. I was just like, what? And then it sort of clicked to me that they don't do that here. That it's not the same thing. They're not used to having a hierarchy or anything like that. It's all about, right, what can I get in a shorter period of time? If I don't play in the first team, who cares? I'm a millionaire. And there's just no motivation for it. There's no drive from any player to say, I want to get in that first team. I want to get that big contract, because they've already got it. They're on big contracts, driving nice cars, playing under 23 football. And to me, it's just not the same.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Because there's a few players that I can sort of look and gone, I noticed that they want to play football. It's like Ethan Ampadu. I mean, he's going out on loan.
Yeah.
But I think he's one of the rarity of setting examples of football where this is how it should be done. Because he's 20, he's younger than me, but he's out there, he's saying, look, he's gone to, when he was at Chelsea, well, he technically is, but when he went to Exeter, which is the team you played for, he went to Exeter, but now he's at Sheffield United. All right, they're not doing anything. But in terms of, if you look at it, he set an example for himself that people are going, but he's doing so well there. It doesn't matter about the results. He's doing very well, and it's proven a point of this is what he can offer. Maybe Chelsea may have a change of heart, but as I'm recording this, Lampard's been sacked, so it is, you need to set an example, and I think
and he's going to come back, and you'll have a Chelsea player who's maybe 24 in the reserve setup or in the 23 setup, hasn't played a game. Ethan Ampadu's got nearly 200 games on his CV. 20 years old. A manager's just going to go, bang, you've got the experience. It doesn't matter what you're on, how good you are, or how good I think the other person is. It's experience. Manager wants somebody who's got 200 games at 20. It's unbelievable. Played international football, played abroad, went abroad for a little bit. So that experience is massive. And it's just, like I said, I'd urge anyone to go out and get games on loan if possible.
And this is why I think this is with Cardiff City now. There was a coverage on S4C about it, where a lot of players from Cardiff City's youth academy. But I've been very critical. I've been very critical about Cardiff City's youth academy, because I always try in my opinion, most of the players that have gone into the first team, the young ones, apart from Mark Harris, some of them have gone on loan. And they're getting the game time, and they're coming back, and Cardiff are there going, "Oh, we don't want you no more," and they send them off into the conference and everything. And I'm thinking, they're your youth. I think it's more. And and Cardiff are losing money because of COVID, and I'm thinking to myself, use those players who have gone out of their way to get the game experience. And it's like now SRC are doing a coverage where some players, like Barry, have had 2 or 3 of them because of the close relationship, and they gained so many games. And I think it's a great opportunity, because I see, George Ratcliffe, who's the number 1 goalkeeper for Cardiff's Youth Academy, he will go far. And if he don't, then it's a crying shame to see that happen, because he has got the it factor. And especially as well, when you got a lot of fans who are looking at that, and they always try. I mean, I don't blame some of them if they don't understand it, but they should understand the point where they're going, why are they going to the Cymru Premier or the Welsh Premier League when it's a conference, this and that. I'm thinking, it's experience for the players, and it's European competition if they do well with the club, or they've won, and they may win the Cymru Premier title now. It's like Ben Cabango, I pronounce his name. I mean, he was on loan to the New Saints, and he wasn't starting in Swansea. And as soon as he came back from TNS, he's now playing, and I mean, he's doing wonders with Swansea. He's getting Wales call-up calls, and it's just, it's all, madness, to say the least, and I just completely agree with you that there needs to be examples set of, and the clubs need to address it. Say, look, or even the players themselves say, look, I'm doing this because I want to play, not I want to get the next check-in and get my Chevrolet car or whatever. It's just
it almost brings them back down to earth a little bit sometimes. And I think it's a great way, like I said, if you're at the bigger clubs and you've got the nice facilities, you've got your kit washed and laid out for you every day, you go to a non-league club, that doesn't happen. You take your own kit home to wash. It'll be the same at Barry. You go, right, you do your own boots. We don't take your boots to the game. You bring your own boots. And players will either go 2 ways with that. They'll either go, well, I'm not doing this, and then just sack it off completely. Or they'll be like, I don't want to play at this level. I want to play higher. Like, I want to have the nice things. So then they put in more effort. So it goes either way, and it's a great little leveler to. And I don't think people appreciate the standard of football at lower level either. You've got, I know David Cottrell really well from obviously the Welsh Seps and stuff, and you've got players of that ability playing in that side, in that league. It's not to turn your nose up at it. I've had players come down from Premier League clubs and Championship clubs to play on loan, a team I'm at in non-league, and they'll come down in their tracksuits and all this, and we'll be like, straight on them, right? Take your tracksuit off. You're not at Bristol City anymore. You're here, so act like it, And I think they think, oh wow, these lads are actually better than I thought they'd be. So we're not a pub team, we're doing this as a job as well. So it's a definite leveler for people dropping down. And like I said, they either go 1 or 2 ways. They either go, right, yeah, I want to be back where it's nice and cushy, but I'm going to work hard to get there. Or they go, yeah, this isn't for me. I'm too good for this. So it's a great little leveler as well.
Yeah, because when David Cottrell was announced, when Barry announced David Cottrell, and I've had him on the show, and he told me, he just said, I want to play. He just wants to play. He said, he did, because I remember he told me in person as well. He said, look, because he had obviously mental health problems and everything, but then when he came back, he really wanted to play, and it's just, he didn't care what level it was, just let me play. And I was really happy when he signed for us, because I thought, yes, we got that experienced Premier League or Championship player. And especially the fact we always turn to his cousin Jordan Cottrell, because he plays for us, and he's like, and then we go in, thank you very much, and he was like, didn't do anything. And it's just like,
like I said, he wants to be there because he doesn't need it. He doesn't need to be playing. He doesn't need the money. It's like I said, it proves that he just wants to be there, wants to play football, and that's what it comes down to in the end.
Yeah. Moving on to one of the clubs that's had a fall, but now they're on the rise again. It's Hereford United, or Hereford FC as they're called now, or AFC Hereford. And I got a friend who supports them, and I've had one or two former Hereford players, such as Ryan Green, and he's the first ever guest I've had on the show where I had to do a phone call for him. He said, I don't know how to do the Zoom. I was there going, oh, okay.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
But what a top bloke he was. And I think he's another key example. He's played for Wales and everything, and but with Hereford, there was Hereford and there was Hamilton. So you could have had the opportunity to go and play in Scotland, because I think Hamilton were after your signature as well. What made you decide to go to Hereford instead of going to Scotland to play? What was the key reason?
Yeah, it was funny. I actually did an interview about this the other day, and obviously, I didn't really, like I said, from playing football, I didn't really understand it a lot. I didn't understand the business side of it. I was only young. I had an agent from when I've had since I was young, and I've had him all the way through my career. But they said, right, Hereford want you, and I was like, I knew where Hereford was, but I was just like, well, what league are they in? They were like the conference. So I didn't really even know what the conference was. I was in, like I said, such that Cardiff bubble. I didn't really know, but I'd been banned from drink driving. So again, another reason why Dave Jones probably wasn't having me that much. Yeah. So I needed somewhere a bit close to home, back in Gloucester. So, without it being a football decision, really, I was thinking, right, where can I get a bus from to get to training? Because I haven't got a car for 18 months. So I moved back in with my mum in Gloucester, and then used to get the bus to Hereford, hour and a half, whatever it is, on a bus every day, every morning for training. Obviously, they were flying high at the conference at the time. Greeny was there, some good players there. Big club. I knew about, obviously, the sort of fan base they had. I played at the ground a few times in reserve games. I think that's why the manager, Graham Turner, at the time actually wanted me there, because I'd done quite well in the reserve game for Cardiff. So I was going in there knowing that they were probably going to win games because they're at the top, but I didn't appreciate sort of the level of football it was going to be. Very physical, good standard technically, and I didn't think it. I thought I'd just walk in and breeze it and score 3-4 goals every game. Obviously, wasn't the case. It was a tough standard, but ended up really well. Obviously, winning the promotion over the Greenies, left foot wand that I've never seen him do again. They put in the top corner, so ended quite well in the end.
You went and played for Hereford on 2 occasions, because I remember, you had the transfer to go to Hereford, and then you went to a few other clubs, and then you went back to Hereford. Explain to me, what was it like to play for Hereford? And I never rated, and this is not me, trying to blow smoke up my mate's ass, with Hereford. I always rated Hereford as a great club, and they've got a proud history. So what was it like to be playing for Hereford on 2 occasions? And what was the reason behind you going back there on your second spell? What was the reason?
So I remember the first spell I had, I was just amazed about how many fans they used to get, sort of the passion in the town. You couldn't go anywhere without somebody saying, oh, can we have a quick picture? Oh, it was like being in the Premier League. It was such a small place. Hereford's the only bit of sport they've got, the football, and everybody in Hereford supports the football. It's as simple as that. So I remember feeling like, this is actually a bit bigger than I probably, predicted. Obviously ended up really well, ended up leaving and then going away, getting more experience, playing a lot more league games and then coming back. And Simon Davey was the manager at the time. And he sort of rang me and said, would you like to come back down? It was great timing. My partner at the time was pregnant with my daughter. So she was from Hereford. So it was a great opportunity to go back. The club had evolved massively from what it was, starting a League Two campaign, and it seemed that, this is a fresh start. I'm going to be playing a lot of games, hopefully scoring a few goals. And then he ended up getting sacked after 10 games, as we only won 1 in 10 games. So it ended well that season. Obviously, we got our physio, Jamie Pittman, in charge. who I played with at Forest Green and Hereford in my first spell. And ended up being top goal scorer that year. We stayed up on the penultimate day after being bottom in January, which is like sort of unheard of in League Two. So yeah, it was like a great escape, but ended up in a really good season there when I went back for the second time.
Going on to Forest Green Rovers, when you went and signed for them, and I'm going to mention, quite a few clubs, because you were, on two, where was it? Where's the top goal scorer? Because you were top goal scorer for Forest Green Rovers, I think. You were top goal scorer for, was it Hereford? You were another top.
Hereford, Luton. Yeah, so there's been a few in there. Weymouth, when I went on loan to Weymouth as well. So yeah, there's been a few.
Yeah, and when you went to Forest Green Rovers, what was your initial thought then when you got to that club? Did you just feel to yourself as an individual that if I keep pushing myself, I may try and climb back up a bit higher so I can play in the Championship? What was going through your mind at the time? No disrespect to Forest Green Rovers.
No,
I think they're a great club, because they're doing well at the moment, in the League Two, and I think they got a bright future ahead of them. But at that time, what was your response to signing for Forest Green Rovers, and also for you, what was the target for you as an individual?
It was a weird one. Like I said, I got released from Hereford, and it proper hit me. It probably hit me worse than leaving Cardiff, because I'd had a League Two experience. I played a lot of games that year. Ended up getting released after scoring quite a few goals, and I was basically thinking, like, what else have I got to do now to get somewhere? And then again, I probably wanted to stay local. The phone wasn't ringing off the hook, and Forest Green, I had a few friends. Alex Lawless, who's a great pal of mine, was there. And he sort of said, "Oh, just come down here." And it was literally 10 minutes from my house. So I was like, "Oh yeah, why not?" It's in the conference. They're in the brand new stadium for the first year. Obviously not the club it is now. So, a lot more grounded. We were getting, 400 fans at home, something like that in the conference.
Less vegan.
And it was basically, less vegan. Yeah. So it was basically like my last chance. So, I didn't really have any targets at all. Just wanted to play. I was sort of hanging on to my career a little bit, thinking, I know I've got ability. I know I can score goals, but it's just been a bit stop-start at the moment. And I just hit the ground running. I don't know what it was. There was no magic formula. The way we played, the pitch, everything we did, it just seemed to be, I was scoring a goal. And I think I'd scored up 21 goals up to Christmas. And everybody was sort of starting to message me, and like all old people that I haven't heard from in years, and saying, "Oh my God, like you're still top of the scoring charts." Like somebody said, "Oh, you've scored more than Ronaldo already, and it's December. Like, what's going on?" And I'm like, I had all these interviews, and BBC were coming down and interviewing and stuff like this. And I was like, it never really fazed me, because I knew what I could do. But I had a mindset of I was going into every game. And if I didn't score, I was so annoyed. Even if we'd won, I didn't care. I just wanted to score goals. And I think that's where probably my mindset changed a lot. Not thinking, I just hope I have a good game today and we win. I just wanted to score all the time. And that was it. And that's probably the most selfish part of my career that I've had since then, where I just thought, right, I just want to score goals. I ended up with like 36 for the season. And then off the back of that, got my move to Charlton, back to the Championship. And I'm a big West Ham fan, and Pardew was the manager. So I was made up when I got to meet him.
So, but it's nothing wrong with being selfish in a way, because I've spoken to a lot of strikers, former players who are strikers, and sometimes you've got to be a bit selfish, haven't you? To be a striker, you got to be selfish because you want the ball, you want to score the goals, and that's and you're getting paid to do that. But when you had that, when you were getting the goals scoring, at the various football clubs and that, did you ever feel to yourself that because you were the highest goal scorer in various clubs, did you feel that you could have you felt you deserved a bit better? Like I said, no disrespect to the conference teams or anything like that, but did you feel that you deserved to be playing in League One, League Two, or maybe even in the Championship level because you were scoring all those goals? Did you ever feel like that in some ways during your career?
Yeah, I felt it in a way. And obviously I played in the Championship, I played in League Two, and then I was in the conference. Then I went back to the Championship. Then I went to Exeter, which was League Two, and then League One. So I'd done all that, but then like I said, I knew I had ability, but I was always sort of on that cusp. I was either banging them in or not scoring at all. And I just think that is mainly down to consistency. You look at Championship players who play regularly, they're double figures every season, if they're a decent striker. And I just don't think I had that consistency. I was all or nothing for some reason in my career. I wish I could put my finger on it, but I was either scoring 20 plus a season or I was on 8 or 9 a season. And sometimes that, when people are just looking at stats, they think, well, why is he having one off season, one on season and stuff like that? And I think it's probably why I've been, like I said at the start, you said, like, I've had so many clubs. I feel like I've been moved on a lot rather than I've never asked for a transfer. I've never asked to go. I've never asked to leave a club, but I try and explain to people who try and wind me up about it, especially the 8 boys now, after 15, 16 clubs. I was like, well, yeah, 8 of those were on loan, and in the conference and in the League Two, you don't get 4 or 5 year deals. You get 1 year deals. You get 2 year deals max, maybe. So at the end of that, you're probably going to be moving on. So I just think it was probably just the consistency of, I knew what I could do, but I just didn't do it consistently enough. And I probably accepted that when I went to Eastleigh non-league after leaving Luton. And I sort of accepted then that I'm probably not going to get back to the Championship now, or that level. I may be able to get back to the league, but I'd sort of made peace with it a little bit. And I thought, I just want to enjoy my football again. And I just want to play and score. And like I said about being that sort of selfish striker at Forest Green and trying to continue that. I think I changed again then when I went back to non-league, because I scored goals at a decent level. And then I was sort of thinking, I was only about 28, and I kept thinking, other players need chances now. And then I sort of changed my game completely and being a bit more of a target man and being a little bit more of I used to buzz off assisting people or going around the keeper and passing it to people so they could score. And it just flipped on its head. And I think that's carried on to my career now, where for the last sort of 2 seasons, I've been a captain at a club. I felt like a bit more of a role model and a leader. So it's weird how it changes and how you sort of adapt your game to, like you said, getting older or just getting a little bit more experience.
So let's move on to Wales under-21 when you got a call up to play for the Wales under-21 squad. There's a picture that I found where you were playing against, I think it was Anton Ferdinand. It was that one against England. Yeah. When did you find out that you were going to get the call up to play for Wales under-21? And tell us about that time where you were playing against England, especially against the likes of, I don't know what the England squad was like back then. All I saw was Anton Ferdinand, but there were probably been a few more big names, But explain to me, what was it like, to play for Wales and to play against England at that time?
So it all started. I started off in the Victory Shield game, so I got the call. Obviously, being at Cardiff, we had about 4 or 5 players in that Victory Shield squad, which was like schoolboys, so under 16s. And then I actually got a call up to the under 17s. Victory Shield. So I actually played my first game for Wales for the under 17s before I actually played on TV in the Victory Shield. And then I went all the way through the age group, so 16, 17s, 19s, under 20s, and then eventually I just filtered into the under 21. So I can't remember my first game for the under 21s, if I'm honest. I remember I think I got about 7-8 games in total. Ended up going to Azerbaijan, and obviously we drew all the teams that the first team used to draw, and we'd travel away with them, the likes of Gary Speed and Robbie Savage and Bellamy. So to be around those sort of guys was amazing anyway. But we had a pretty good under 21 side. My last game was against Turkey, I think, at Ninian Park. Obviously when Gareth Bale had just come on the scene, so he was a sort of a skinny left back with a long throw. Hence why he never makes my top 11 players, because he wasn't that good when I played him. So, but no, when we ended up playing England a few times, we played him at under 20 level, and then we played him at under 21 level. So the likes of James Milner played, Aaron Lennon played, Luke Moore, Stephen Taylor, ex-Newcastle, Ria Coker, Huddleston, like I said, Anton Ferdinand. So players who've gone on to have big careers. And it probably showed as well. I think we got beaten 2-0 in the one game, and I think it was 4-0 in the other game. So, but great experience. I was a West Ham fan, so I got Ria Coker's shirt as well. So I was quite happy about that. But yeah, it was sort of it just showed the massive gulf in talent, basically the talent pool. They had sort of players on the bench who were playing regular Championship football. And then players who were filtering into the first team, like James Milner, like I said, Aaron Lennon, and people who are playing in the Premier League. And I'm like at Hereford United in League Two and stuff, and it's crazy the difference, and obviously the quality did show through, but amazing experiences.
When you went to Charlton, there were actually a few teams, after your signature. I mean, you had Crystal Palace, there was Charlton Athletic, and there was League Two clubs such as Gillingham, and I think Crewe Alexandra were after you. But because you had Crystal Palace and Charlton Athletic after you, what was the reason behind going to Charlton, and what happened during your time at Charlton? How come you never really I don't know about the cups and everything, cup games and everything, but first team in the league. What was going on at that time at Charlton? So it's basically a two-part question, really.
Yeah, fine. Yeah.
So
basically it was when I was at Forest Green, on the deadline day in January, they accepted a bid from Crewe. So I went down, met Dario Gradi, met the football club. Basically, sort of, they offered me a contract, great deal, League One, and I was like, yeah, this is a bit of me. I'm on the train on the way home, and my agent rings me and says, don't sign it. And I'm like, right, okay. He said, I've got Alan Pardew on the phone. And I was like, bloody hell, that's like a West Ham fan anyway. I was like, all right, okay. He said, Charlton want to sign you. He said, but they don't want you now. They want you in the summer. I was like, right, okay. And they sort of said, but you're not going to sign now. You're going to stay at Forest Green. I was like, okay. He said, so you're going to sign a pre-contract. Don't tell anyone. Tell your family if you want, but don't tell anyone. So I went and met Alan Pardew next day in London. When I met him, he basically said, yeah, we want you in July. We've had you watched 10, 11 times. I think you scored in every game. So we want you down there. Signed a pre-contract, and in July, it sort of got released that I'd signed for Charlton, and I had to act surprised, even though I knew I was staying at Forest Green for the rest of the season. And it worked out quite well for Forest Green because they had to offer me a deal to get some compensation money. And I think they obviously got a year's worth of money, which I think turned out to be about 100 grand. And then they got a friendly out of it as well, plus a couple of add-ons also. So that's how it all sort of went down, me signing there. When I got there, I was very overawed by how big it was. I've been at Cardiff in the Championship. This was a different level. They'd come down from the Premier League. I had a little Vauxhall Corsa at the time. So I drove that into the car park, and I couldn't find my car afterwards because there was just Range Rovers just shielding it out the way. And it was just a different world. Being in London or just outside of London, the money was big. The players were all ex-Premier League. And it didn't have that sort of, like I said, that camaraderie that I had at Cardiff with the first team, and you could go and chat to the first team and that. It was everybody for himself, who's got the most money, who's got the biggest cars. And I'd just come out of non-league again. So, I was really overawed by it. But some of the players at the time, Marcus Bent was there, Jerome Thomas, Darren Ambrose, Matt Holland, Mark Hudson, some fantastic players, and a great sort of learning curve for me to be there. And under Pardew, I remember on the first, we had a training day at the Valley. So he said, there's going to be fans down here. I think it was like 5,000 fans came to watch the training. And Pardew's mic'd up, and he's sort of, I've had a shot, and he said, he's one of our new signings for the season, Stuart Fletcher. And yeah, I was Fletch for 2 years then. Obviously, he got my name wrong. But that's what it was like. I was such a small fish in a big pond that it cost nothing for them to give me the contract or to have me there. Biggest contract I've ever had. But it was just such a big place to be around that I was probably overawed a little bit. I used to travel all the time with the first team under Pardew. So it was me and John Joe Shelby, who was only 16 at the time. Used to always go to the home and the away games, 17th, 18th man, just in case somebody got injured. So I was on the cusp, and I was doing well in the reserves, scoring most weeks for the reserves. And then he got the sack. So I went on loan to Cheltenham, scored a couple of goals there in League Two, came back, went on loan to Brighton in League One, another massive club. Look where they are now. And Pardew got the sack while I was out on loan. The assistant got the job, Parkinson, and he started to play all the young lads, and he started to bring through Shelby and Harry Arter and Josh Wright. And I missed out on that because I was out on loan. And I felt like if I'd have been in and around it with that managerial change, I'd have had more of an opportunity. I ended up playing one cup game, funnily enough, against Hereford. And that was my only appearance for Charlton. But I did feel that I just missed out, and I was unlucky that I wasn't in and around the club when all the changes were going on. All the big players on big money were getting thrown out and left out or whatever because they couldn't afford to pay them, and all the young lads were getting a chance, and I wasn't there. So I felt a little bit, I was a bit down about it, and I thought like, I just needed that one chance, which I never got, unfortunately. But I ended up going on loan to Exeter for the rest of the season, so my third loan that season, getting promoted into into League One, and Charlton ended up coming down. So we were both in the same league then. So I'm thinking, I'll probably get a bit more of a chance now. Ended up Exeter wanted me for another year on loan in League One. So I did really well in the League Two campaign. And I loved it so much down there. And I loved the brand of football and the manager, Paul Tisdale, that I wanted to go there for another year. Because I knew I was going to play League One football, same as Charlton. And ended up having another great year down there. So
it was just a bit of you knew where your fate was going anyway, because obviously Exeter was just, you were loving it so much down there that, well, it is what it is. In as a lot of people say, it is what it is when it comes to football. I want to mention this one club, and we've mentioned it a few times already. It's Luton Town anyway. I mean, Luton Town, in the Championship, they're not far. Well, I know their performance is not being the best, let's just say, but Luton Town, I mean, even though they got a little small ground, about 9 or 10,000, capacity with a few houses built into it, but you could say they are a big club. So, and they were in the conference at the time. So, what was going on then at that time for you? How did the transaction came for you to go to Luton Town and play for them?
So I was at Hereford for my second spell, and then on deadline day, we just started another League Two campaign, 6 games in. Deadline day, got a phone call from the manager, and he said, we've accepted a bid from Luton. And I was like, okay, just been top goal scorer the year before, basically kept him up single-handedly, scored 19 goals in League Two, kept him in the league. And they said, we've accepted a bid from Luton. And I was like, right, okay, another drop down. But then I did a bit of research, looked into the club. They bettered my deal that I was on in League Two at Hereford. And I'm looking, and they're getting 7,000 fans at home every week in the conference. And I'm like, I think this could be big. Like this, and in my head, I thought, right, well, if they've accepted the bid at Hereford, they want me to go. They need to clear me out. They need me off the wage bill, whatever it might be. So I said, fine, yeah, I'll do it. So I ended up moving to Milton Keynes, signed there on the dot, went to training the next day in Luton. Again, another good friend of mine, Alex Lawless, I mentioned him already. He was at Luton. He obviously pushed the deal across for me and sold the club to me. And he just said, mate, you're going to absolutely love it. He said, it's like nothing you've been at before at this level. I'd been at Forest Green in the same league with 400 fans at home. I turned up in my first game with 7,000 people at Kenilworth Road, and it was just unbelievable. Like I said, that second spell at Hereford and that time at Luton was probably the most I've ever enjoyed football. I love big crowds. I love the pressure. Love being the main man. Ended up being the top goal scorer that season at Luton with about 17. And it just fit me. Some of the players we had there, Robbie Wilmot was there, who's obviously at Newport. We had Alex Lawless was there. Andre Gray came through then. We signed Andre Gray. So me and him formed a bit of a partnership. And it just fitted me perfectly. I loved it down there. The fans were amazing. And unfortunately, we lost in the playoff final, but got to play at Wembley, and we took 27,000 to Wembley for a conference playoff final. And York, I think, had 6,000 there. So when they beat us, it was like a pin drop, But it was probably one of the best experiences going there, and like I said, being the main man and having all those fans sort of enjoy the way I played. And like I said, it just fitted. And it was probably one of the best decisions I've made, even though it was such a quick deadline day decision. It's one of the times that I definitely look back on that and really enjoyed my football.
I don't know about pre-COVID, did you ever go and watch Luton Town when you had I know you were still playing football, and you're still playing football to this day, but whenever you had the chance, did you ever go and watch Luton play? And do you still get recognised by the Luton Town supporters to this day? Do people go, "Hey, Stuart, what's going on?" And it was.
So I thought, like I said, as I'm still playing, I've never been back to Luton since my last game. Mainly down to because you never get Saturday free anymore. So I don't think I've been back to a game for a long, long time at any club. to go and watch, just because I said you're never free on a Saturday anymore. The only day off you have is on a Sunday with the kids and the missus. So I don't think I'd be in the good books if I went and watched football on the Sunday as well. But no, I think it's crazy. Wherever you go, there's a Luton fan. And I've always said it. I went on my brother's stag to Amsterdam, and there's 10 lads all singing my name at the bar. My brother's like, "What's going on here?" And they're like, "Oh, we're Luton fans and all this." When we're in Amsterdam, it's mental. And I've been away to Spain and had a few people come up to me and say, "Oh, Stuart Fleetwood, you used to play for Luton, yeah?" I was like it's crazy for a club of where they were, obviously in the Championship now, but from where they were, it just seems like there's a Luton fan everywhere, or there's a famous Luton fan. We've been in the change rooms at Luton before a game, and Miranda Hart, the comedian, popped her head in the door and said hello to everyone, and we're like, she's like, "Oh yeah, massive Luton fan," and all this, and like little things like that. You don't realise how big the club reaches out, how big it is, and like I said, people will still like message me on Twitter and stuff and say, really enjoyed you at Luton, like some great days back then, and I still really think fondly of the club because the way it was run. You never asked for anything. Everything was done for you. Everything was done properly. Yes, they had a big budget, but they could have a big budget because they used to have so many fans come to the games. With that come a lot of pressure. I've been booed off there after winning 1-0 because it wasn't 4 and 5-0. The expectation was massive, but it's something that I enjoy more. I've been in a relegation battle with Hereford, obviously where we stayed up, but I much prefer the pressure of being at the top of the league or having to win every week because it just makes it so much more exciting. And like I said, one of my best times.
Did you ever feel that because there have been one or two players I've spoken to that wish they would have gone back to their original club, as they say, the club they started, and of course that was Cardiff City. During your career, I know that Cardiff was still, they were bouncing up and down in the Championship and everything. But did you ever feel that you would have wished or you would have wanted Cardiff just to make a bid and say, "Oh yeah, we want him back," because of the top goal scorers and everything, and because they may have had, Michael Chopra and Jay Bothroyd and probably whatever player was there. But did you ever feel that I would have loved to have gone back to Cardiff? Did you ever have that feeling, or was it just just sail through and see how it goes?
No, 100%. Like it's one of those things that you look back on and you think, "Oh, I'd probably love to go back if it was at Ninian Park." I think that just I had a sort of affiliation with that ground from being a ball boy and having the towel for Andy Legg and his throw-ins. That was my first experience of being there. The Bristol City games there, where it's just kicking off and the atmosphere is just unreal. The club's changed identity so much since then, from obviously the change to a red kit and things like that. And it wouldn't feel the same now, obviously, but to go back there to where it started would have been a massive dream, obviously. And to this day, I still get Cardiff City fans message me on Twitter and tell me how well I've done from on Football Manager or whatever it is. And it's like I said, it's something that I'll always look out for the results. I'll always, if they're playing on TV, I'll always watch it. I'll always want them to do well. And it's always going to hold a massive place for me because it's where I learned my trade. It's where I started off, and I feel like I'm the player now and I'm the person I am now, mainly the person I am now, because of what they taught me and because of the respect you had to show to other players, because of the way you had to act around there. And I think it's something, like I said, that I think still is missing in the game now. But I'm so glad that I grew up in that environment, because in the summer, we used to have to paint the stand. As youth team players, we have to come in the summer and paint the stand ready for the next season. That would never happen nowadays, but that grounded us and it made me the person I am now. And I've coached kids and I've worked at Charlton Academy, and I've installed that in other players. And their parents have come to me and said, "Oh, like their schoolwork's improved or their attitude at home's improved because of what you've sort of given them as experience of what you went through." Those sort of youth team days are some of the best memories, and I've got friends from that changing room to this day. Ushers at my wedding and, best friends for life from that youth team change room at Cardiff.
And one of the things I want to mention, I've got a couple of questions left. And again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a brilliant chat with you and some amazing stories as well. so there was, you went back to Hereford, you went back to Forest Green Rovers, but after Luton, you were sort of flowing around in the conference area. You went to, like you said, went to Eastleigh, at loan at Forest Green Rovers again. It was Sutton, Bath, Weymouth, Redditch, etc. Was there any club that stood out for you that, out of all these clubs, because every time I think of Bath City, I think where they are now, I always go, huh? Because I always thought, Bath was that kind of club to be, sort of on the fingertips to the league, but I was just surprised where they were. But was there any club that you went to that took you by surprise? Because I don't want to underestimate any conference club, because it's like with it's like you get it in the Cymru Premier, when it's like when Barry first played against Carnarvon, we heard about the experience, but when we got there, it was absolutely amazing. But was there any non-league club that you played for that took you by surprise, the way they had the fan base in that?
Yeah, I think so. I think Weymouth was the one, and Bath was probably the one that I was so surprised at. Only, like I said, not for good reasons. I went there, and like you said, I've always been the same. I've played against Bath in the conference, and I've played against them in Conference South and whatever. And when I joined, they were Conference South, but it was almost, there was a feeling around Bath that they were just happy where they were, and the fans were sort of happy where they were. And that surprised me. I expected it to be a sort of a bigger time club and everything done properly. And it wasn't really, like I said, without any disrespect to him, it's probably the only club that I've been at, and this is out of all the clubs I've been at, where I didn't really feel part of it, and I didn't really get what the club was about. Like you said, even from a fan's point of view, you think, oh yeah, Bath, remember Bath? Like they've got a great history of, like, FA Cup runs and dropping in and out of leagues, and but there felt like there was no real identity of the club when I got there, which was probably the biggest surprise I've had. But the club that surprised me the most in a good way was definitely Weymouth. Went there on loan from, I remember now, from Bath. Yeah, from Bath. So went down there for a month in October, liked it, and they said, well, we want you for the rest of the season. And I said, yeah, let's go for it. I was traveling from Gloucester to go and play on a Saturday. I was training at Bath during the week, traveling 2.5 hours on my own to a game. Ended up being the top goal scorer there, scoring 17, 18 goals. And I just loved it. 2,000 fans, 2,500 fans a week. Great bunch of lads, great group. And obviously they've gone on to be in the conference, now. And they've got a good friend of mine, Brian Stock, as manager, who I did my B license with as well, another Welsh lad. And like I said, the feeling of the club was just, again, I go stop off and have a coffee in Weymouth before the game if I ever got there early, and there was like, oh, good luck today, Stu. Good luck today, Fleets. Oh, you're having a great season, mate. Keep it going. Like, everything was evolved around the football club. We'd have the derbies against Dorchester and Yeovil and stuff like that, and it was massive for these fans. Huge. You don't realise how big it is when you go to different parts of the world, different parts of the country and stuff. But as a club, always look out for their results. Still got a few friends that play there now. Played him a couple of times since then, scored a few against him as well, which is always nice. It was to remind them what I'm about. But yeah, great affiliation with the fans. Ended up being the top goal scorer there, and a great club that, like I said, surprised me the most of how big and the enormity of the football club in the town.
Did you ever feel, one of the last questions I got is, because of your talent and because where you've come from, the experience, was there ever a moment during your career where you could have gone to a different league system, such as the Welsh League or the Scottish League or maybe the Irish League or maybe abroad? Was there any moments where it almost happened? Obviously, because with Hamilton, there was a battle between Hereford and Hamilton for your signature. But did you ever feel the time that you could have gone to a different league to show off your talents there and get the experience? Was there ever a moment during your career?
Yeah, so when I left Luton, my agent said we've had a call from Inverness up in Scotland again. Terry Butcher was the manager. He said he knows you as a player. He obviously follows Luton and stuff, and he'd like you to come up here, play in the Scottish Prem. He said you get to play Celtic 4 times a year, Rangers 4 times a year. That alone is a massive thing. I had a daughter at the time who was 2. She was living in Hereford with her mum as we parted ways, and I didn't do it for that reason. I just wouldn't have seen my daughter ever. I'm a big family man. I've got 3 kids, got a wife, and it was that reason I said, like, I just can't do it for the traveling. I do think what would have been if I didn't have a young family, I would have gone abroad. Definitely, I never had an opportunity to go abroad, but I would have done it in a heartbeat. Gone and played in America, wherever, just try and see the world or as much of it. I did get to see a lot of different countries, playing in Wales. Went out to Poland and, like I said, Azerbaijan and Spain and France and everywhere with Wales, which has been amazing. But if I'd have had the chance, then yeah, I'd have taken it. But family comes first in my life, simple as that. And Inverness tried to sell it to me by saying, "Oh, we've got an airport," and I was like, "Yeah, it's still it's a long way." Do you know what I mean? It was right at the top of Scotland, and that year I think they got to the Scottish Cup final. I think they had their best season ever. So it was probably a bad decision on my part, but I wouldn't have changed it. If I hadn't had a young family, I'd have been gone. Yeah, 100%. I'm not a person that is nervous about going and enjoying other cultures or being somewhere that I'm not comfortable. I'm not a home bird. I will go wherever it takes me, but the family thing is just too big for me. I need to be around people who I know and I love, and like I said, I think that's the clubs I've been at in my last few years. I've always said to people I need to be within an hour radius of where I am. It's as simple as that. Yeah. Hence why I went to Merthyr, and Eastleigh was only an hour and a half away. And then obviously the clubs I've been at, Redditch only an hour away, and now Yates half an hour down the road. So it's obviously, as I got older and I've got young kids, and my 6-year-old boy just started playing football, and he's not bad, to be fair. He's all right. He said he wants to be a goalkeeper, but yeah, I'm definitely not having that. But yeah, so I want to go and watch him as much as possible. And if I have to leave at 10 o'clock to go to a game because I've got to travel 3 hours, I'm going to miss out on all that stuff. And yeah. I feel like I've done enough in my career to look back on it and be proud of it, and be proud of it. So I've got no regrets, but it was definitely options there to do it. But like I said, family comes first.
Well, you've already answered my question. I was going to say, how do you look back on your career? Because I've always finished it up, but you just basically just said it. I thought, fair play. You know what I'm going to say. So I think one for you then is, still a young player. You still can do it, and I want to know, would Gloucester City still be on the cards, or is it just gone by now? Is it still on the table for you to maybe go, Gloucester?
It's always going to be there for me. I was a fan as a kid. I used to go there every Saturday, rip up the yellow pages when we scored a goal and throw it in the air. And now they're finally back at their home, where I used to go so often as a kid. That if ever it happened, I'd be there in a heartbeat. Obviously, the budget is decent down there at the moment, and they're flying at the top of the Conference North. Are they in now? So. Yeah, it'll always be an option for me, whether it be as a player, a coach, a manager, whatever. That's what I'm sort of looking towards now a little bit more. I've still got plenty of legs left in me. I played 50 games for Swindon last season, so I've still got plenty left in the tank. And I played every game for Yates since I've been there as well. So 34, 35 in April, but plenty left in the tank. But I think if anything was to happen at a higher league now, it would be as a coach or a manager one day, which is something that I'm definitely looking to get into as well.
Well, Stuart, thank you so much for coming on the Dragons Voice podcast. It's really been a pleasure, to speak to you about your career and just basically just talk about football in general, because that's the whole point. But you're Welsh. I know you said that as well. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
No worries, Reece. Thanks, mate.
No worries. So, guys, that was Stuart Fleetwood on the Dragons Voice podcast. And I want to say a big thank you all to support the channel. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel. And, just stay safe and, keep watching the channel. And I will promise you that there will be more content in the future to come. And when COVID's gone, done and dusted, and as soon as the vaccine gives a stone cold stunner to that one, then I am definitely going to do a lot more content. So just stay safe, guys. More to come. I've been your host, Stuart Fleetwood, and I'll see you all next time.